Well, happy Mother's Day. Man, wasn't that a special treat having those ladies up here? I just thought that was so cool. Yeah, so here at Counterculture, we're passionate about vocation. And vocation, that means your occupation, but more than that, it's your calling. God cares about what you do Monday to Saturday, not just Sunday morning. Of course, he cares about what you do Sunday morning too, but he cares about what you do all week long. And so here at Counterculture, we're a new church. We're just a year and a half old. We're like a little baby, you know. We're only a year and a half old, but we've interviewed professional artists, you know, with their master's degree in fine art. We've interviewed a professional photographer. Shout out to Lenny. Don't worry, she's not creepy or anything. She's really great, and probably our Instagram might be half the reason why you're here. So thanks to Lenny. We've interviewed Lenny before. We've interviewed Yemi, who's a licensed therapist. We also interviewed a different therapist the previous year. And so we care about vocation. We're thankful for mothers. It's kind of funny as a pastor, you know, observing human behavior, because I come from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and in Albuquerque, Mother's Day is like the biggest Sunday of the year because all the moms want to bring their kids to church. But here in Portland, people have more dogs than children. And so Mother's Day isn't the packed out Sunday of the year, but we're just stoked that you're here with us, continuing in our series, Fallen Empire, and we are so grateful for every mom that's in this place, as has already been stated. So I've titled my message today, Two Women and a Tyrant. Two Women and a Tyrant. And it's pretty cool because we have some heroic women, perfect for Mother's Day, just kind of landed that way. But I want to talk today about something we all deal with, and that's fear. Fear. Because in this passage, we see a tyrant, a king, who's filled with fear about an immigrant population that is growing, and he feels like it's overwhelming his nation's identity. And it's filled with fear. And we all deal with fear. There's women, and I'm sure they were afraid that Pharaoh would kill them. They overcame their fear. How did they do it? Through fear of God. But fear is something we all deal with. You know, it could be fear just about paying your bills. Fear about, you know, losing that promotion. Fear about not getting that raise. It could be fear about your health. Fear about a diagnosis. It could be fear about some suffering, some difficulty you're going through. It could be fear about the nation, fear about the future of what's happening in Washington, D.C. It could be, just fear of like, oh, what if this dream that I'm pursuing, what if it doesn't work out? What if it all falls apart? What if I never get married? What if I'm single forever? You know, what if I just have to continually have these really bad hinge dates that never go well? You know, like, what if? It's those questions that fill our mind. What if it all falls apart? Well, that's where we are, and I always like to do a little recap, bringing you up to speed, because we're jumping into the Bible, this ancient document. We're jumping into Exodus. I'm going to give you, hopefully, a 60-second recap of the story so far. So God is an artist, and he creates the world. God loves to share, and he creates human beings in his image, and he commands them to rule, which is amazing because that's sharing. He's sharing his power. It means that every human being you see is royalty. That's what the first page of the Bible says, that every human being should be treated like royalty. So God loves to share, and he creates this beautiful thing, but in that sharing and sharing his power, there's the opportunity to make choice. And humanity chooses to rebel against God by saying, we're going to choose what's good and what's evil. You know the tree of knowledge and good and evil, very famous, the forbidden fruit. Well, later Hebrew authors, in their very Hebrew way, in their literary genius way, comment on that verse. And the point is, they're doing what's right in their own eyes. Notice how in Genesis chapter 3 it says, wise, eyes, good, evil. If you read Judges, you read Proverbs, you read Isaiah, what's really going on there is they're doing what's right in their own eyes. Up till this point, God has been deciding what's good and what's evil. God saw that it was good, but now Eve is the one deciding what's good and what's bad. I'm going to live my life my way. I'm going to do what's right for me. I'm going to follow my heart. I'm going to do what's right in my own eyes. Sound familiar? That's the story of the human condition, and that's what the human race. But what happens? Immediately there's relational breakdown. When they stop accepting God's definition of good, breakdown, suspicion, Cain murders Abel. It all spirals out of control into violence till violence overwhelms the whole earth. There's brutality and war and genocide and broken families and broken relationships. And it all comes to Genesis chapter 11, and this is our series, Fallen Empire. It all comes to the founding of Babylon. Babel. The Tower of Babel. In Hebrew, it's just the Tower of Babylon. It's the founding of Babylon. And this is what I want to show you. I want to compare with you Exodus, because you go, isn't this a series about Babylon, fallen empire? Isn't it a Babylon series? Why are we in Egypt? Why aren't we in Babylon? What are we doing in Egypt this morning? Jesse, well, I'll show you. It's what the Hebrew authors are doing. Genesis, put it on the screen, Genesis chapter 11. We studied this a couple weeks ago. They said to each other, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar instead of mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so we may make a name for ourselves." By the way, if you missed that message, it's funny to me that a lot of people don't know this. Counterculture has a podcast. You can catch the podcast. Last week, we had one of our Justice and Mercy partners speak, Esther Garrett. Catch her on the Counterculture podcast. But we did a whole message on Genesis chapter 11 that you should listen to. The series won't really make sense without it. So check that out. But check this out. It says, brick and mortar, brick and mortar, brick and mortar. Rabbis and Bible scholars have pointed out there is this literary technique that is absolutely genius that flows through the Bible. And they use key words as a shorthand, like an Easter egg, to throw you back to previous things. And that's what's happening here in Exodus chapter 1. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites, and they worked them ruthlessly. They made their lives bitter with harsh labor in brick and mortar. Egypt's acting just like Babylon. Egypt is acting just like the Tower of Babel. What does Pharaoh want to do? He wants to make a name for himself. And he sees this immigrant population. If I was doing a better runway on Genesis, I would, or if I had more time, I should say, God says that he's going to bless the world, even though the world's fallen, even though they've fallen into violence and sin. God's going to bless the world through Abraham. Abraham's descendants end up rebelling against God too, and because of that, they end up in Egypt. But God's still merciful to them. He still cares about them. But here they are, and the people who are meant to bless the whole world are now getting oppressed. They're now getting crushed into slavery, and Pharaoh's threatened by this immigrant population. He's afraid. He's afraid for his empire. He's full of fear. And because of that fear, he acts out of fear. He says, I got to deal with this threat. There's a national security threat, and I have to protect my empire's national security. So he begins to work them ruthlessly through brick and mortar. Egypt is Babylon 2.0. All right, so that brings us up to speed. Our first thought is that human empires are shot through with fear. Human empires are shot through with fear. Look at verse 9. Look, Pharaoh said, the Israelites have become too numerous for us. Come, we must deal shrewdly. We must be clever. We must be snake-like, with them. And they'll become even more numerous. And if war breaks out, they'll join with our enemies and fight against us and leave the country. You see, so the people dreaded the Israelites. That his heart was filled with fear, and it's national security. He wants to consolidate power. He wants to shore things up. He can't allow any threats to threaten the great nation of Egypt. And, there's nothing wrong with patriotism. There's nothing wrong with caring about your nation, caring about your kingdom. I mean, that's kind of a king's job, right? To look after his interests. But the fear fills him up so much because what's happening is he's taking a good thing, that's his nation, and he's made it into an ultimate thing where he says, if Egypt isn't the greatest kingdom on earth, then I'm nothing, then I'm worthless. If Egypt isn't the most glorious, divine empire, with just the absolute apex of technology, the apex of civilization, the gold, the chariots, the warfare, the bows and arrows, the everything. He just wants it to be the greatest thing. And he says, if it's not the greatest thing, then what am I? I'm nothing. And here's this threat. They're becoming too numerous. They're outnumbering us. And doesn't this feel a little strangely familiar? What did they chant in Charlottesville? Jews will not replace us. Jews will not replace us. That's what they were chanting at the white supremacist rally back in 2016. Immigrants won't replace us. There are people, and I think they're absolute lunatics, and they've clearly never really studied the Bible, but they're afraid that America isn't going to be white enough. They're afraid of too many people coming from Latin America, too many people, the fact that there's more people from Asia, more people from Africa. Oh man, we're not going to be an English-speaking country in 100 years. We got to do something about this. That's exactly what Pharaoh's chanting. They weren't called Jews back then because Judea hadn't been founded. They were called Hebrews. Hebrews will not replace us. Hebrews will not replace us. Charlottesville has deep roots. It goes far back. This fear, this insecurity. And national security is important. Don't misunderstand me. I mean, there is a place for protecting your citizens. That's a government's job. But when you take a good thing and you make it an ultimate thing, it becomes a bad thing. And that's how empires, human empires, and I want you to say empires, we're going to go on to talk about organizations and corporations and brands and families and households. You take something that's good and you make it all or nothing. It's everything. I can't lose this. And you begin to rationalize and justify the most crazy things of all. But human empires, they're fragile. They're susceptible to economic tides. They're susceptible to the winds of fortune. They're susceptible. And if your meaning in life is anything other than God, it leaves you fragile. And you have to protect your little sandcastle kingdom. And that's what Pharaoh's doing. His identity is not in Yahweh. His identity is not in the ultimate God. His identity is in Egypt and in the glory of Egypt and building a name for himself. And he has to defend his sandcastle kingdom come what may, whatever the cost. I read an interview. My brother actually showed me this interview. Got to hang out in those last week, which was fun. But an interview with Hans Zimmer. Now, Hans Zimmer is one of the most remarkable movie score composers ever. Oscar winner, one of the greatest of all time. He did Gladiator, he did The Lion King, he did Top Gun Maverick. He's done, just you name it. So many fabulous scores. He's probably one of the greatest composers to ever work in the film industry. But in this 60 Minutes interview, he goes, I am filled with constant terror that one day my phone will stop ringing, that one day people won't want me to score their films, that one day the jobs will end and I'll just be a has-been, I'll just be someone forgotten. See, human empires are shot through with fear. Here's Hans Zimmer. He's the greatest composer of all time. But do you realize that no matter who you are, no matter what your name is, there's going to be a day when the phone stops ringing for all of us. In 100 years, Hans Zimmer's beautiful fingers that have composed masterful music, they'll be in a coffin. And whatever movies, if we even have movie theaters in 100 years, I think everybody will probably have like a microchip in their head, just like sit there watching movies, But there will be a day where there's no movies with Hans Zimmer's music. And that terror seizes all of us, doesn't it? Whatever thing you're working to build, and it's great to compose music. It's beautiful. Don't misunderstand me. It's a good thing. Career is a good thing. Family is a good thing. National security is a good thing. These are all good things. But if you make it your meaning in life, if you make it your worth, your significance, if I don't have this, I'm nothing. This is everything. I have to be this. You will live a life racked with fear. You will live a life racked with anxiety that one day the jobs are going to stop coming. That one day, the engagement on your Instagram is going to go down. That one day your quarterlies won't be up and to the right. They'll be down. That one day your family won't be the beautiful, immaculate thing. And I want to say this gently, but even for fathers and mothers, something we need to realize is that if you make your children your meaning in life instead of God, you will crush them under the weight of your expectations, or you'll spoil them and ruin them. You will. And you'll be filled with fear. What about my kids? What are they doing? They're over here. Because it's your whole identity. Your children, your work, your national security, your patriotism. It becomes your identity, and it becomes something bad. I'm just going to say this briefly. This applies to everybody, including pastors. You don't think it's a little nerve-wracking planting a church in the most secular city in America, in downtown Portland, where all that everybody just sees the tents and the bad news stories and the needles and the graffiti? It's terrifying. I get afraid that my little kingdom isn't going to last. And it can be so easy. But one of my mentors who planted a church in 2000 here, he said something so wise. We were hanging out, and he goes, I planted a church, and it grew and grew, and his church took off. It was a massive, huge, influential, successful church. He goes, guys, that feeling never went away. Even when it was huge, even when we owned property, even when we were influential, I always felt like it was a house of cards. Like just one person could turn against me, one thing could happen, one thing's not cool enough, and all of it'll go up in flames. And I'm like, you got a huge church, you own all this property, how's that possible? But here's the most freeing realization in the world that God's been ministering to me that's so freeing. Do you realize there's a day that counterculture won't exist? Do you realize there's a day where Imago won't exist? That was his church. There's a day when Bridgetown won't exist. There's a day when Door of Hope won't exist. There's a day when First Presbyterian won't exist, when Fresh Life won't exist, when Zoe Church, VU Church, Bethel Church, the Catholic Church. None of it will exist. And all there will be the kingdom of Jesus. And that's the day that's coming, when all of our kingdoms will dissolve and it will just be his kingdom. Now, there's a lot of reasons why you should commit to a church and why you should be consistent and lock in, because good things take time. And when we're devoted to one another in love and we lock in, there are things that are possible only together, and we reflect the love of God by being devoted to one another and not constantly being transient and not constantly treating churches like restaurants and be like, well, I got a craving for this one this week, but that one kind of offended me. I don't like this, so I'm going to go over here. There's a lot of reasons not to do that because it doesn't reflect the character of God. But one note we all need to realize is that there's only one empire that's never going to fall. That's the empire of Jesus. And as long as counterculture gets that straight, we're in good shape. All right. So, human empires are shot through with fear. The next thing is protecting a good thing can rationalize evil things. Protecting a good thing can rationalize evil things. So, he doesn't start off drowning babies in the Nile, does he? It escalates. His fear, his what he's willing to do, his calculus, it gets darker and darker. And you, spoiler alert, Prince of Egypt, you probably know the rest of the story. He gets more and more irrational as the book develops. He gets more and more just paranoid, more and more illogical, more and more stubborn, more and more hard-hearted, and God gives Pharaoh all of these chances to repent, and he just gets darker and darker and darker until he's suicidal, and he runs into the Red Sea and his army drowns. He's on a stop at nothing. I don't care what it costs me. I have to hold on to my power. But it's a slow process, and it begins in each one of us. Because I've said it, I say it again. You take a good thing, you make it an ultimate thing, it becomes a bad thing. And you slowly, it could be with your work, it could be the fact that you just never rest. You wear your body down and you wear your mental health down because I just have to work, I have to prove myself, I have to build. Maybe you don't want fame, but maybe what you want is comfort, and you want security. You want to know, I've got that nest egg laid away. Nothing's ever going to shake us. Nothing's ever going to rock us. So I got to work more. You take a good thing, you make it an ultimate thing, it becomes a bad thing. That's what Pharaoh does. It gets to the point that he is throwing babies into the Nile River. It's just genocidal. It's demonic. It's evil. It's megalomania. But I'll give you a more relatable example, perhaps. I don't know if you guys remember Lance Armstrong. Some of you Gen Z, you probably even know, you're like, who's that guy? But like, he was a pretty big deal for a while, okay? He was the face of Nike. He was the face of Oakley. He had a sponsorship with Discovery Channel. Like, they wanted to sponsor him. It's just, okay, My favorite thing is he became like the poster boy of the U.S. Postal Service. Like, how the heck do you even score that? Like, I'm sponsored by the, United States Treasury. It's like I don't even know how that works. But that he was the golden boy, just undefeated, the greatest athlete of all time. He was up there with Michael Jordan, up there with Muhammad Ali. He was with LeBron, with just Michael Phelps, you name it. Okay, he was the Simone Biles, the greatest of all time at the time. And I watched a documentary about him, and he said, I love to win, and he's bragging about this. But to me, losing is dying. And don't we hear that about relationships? If they don't love me, I'm nothing. If I'm not dating someone, if I don't win that Oscar, if I don't get that promotion, I'm nothing. It's death. That's what drove Lance Armstrong. But spoiler alert, what happened with Lance Armstrong is it came out that he so badly wanted to win that he was taking EPO, a steroid. But the thing that really freaked me out that he was doing is in the Alps and all these mountains that you're riding in France, you go up to high levels, there's less oxygen in your blood, so you can't ride as fast. He was doing this thing where he'd go down to sea level and take out blood and get blood transfusions and get this. Then he'd be riding his bike. He'd pull over into a van, get a bag of blood, have the blood put in to reoxygenate himself, pumping him full of steroids, EPO, all of this. That's how badly he wanted to win. I read that Lance Armstrong, when it finally came out, we'll wonder what this is actually the best part of it, that is the most Pharaoh-like, is that when former teammates that he loved, started, being willing to say, hey, this is wrong, Lance, we're going to expose you. He had all this brand money. He was $100 million multimillionaire. He would crush them with lawsuits, destroy their livelihoods, make them go bankrupt, make them go broke to keep the secret from coming out. Did he start off that way? Do you think when he was beating testicular cancer and he was just just a good athlete, a cool guy, and wanted to win the Olympics, wanted to win the Tour de France, do you think he started off thinking, one day I'm going to sabotage all of my best friends and make them go bankrupt through lawsuits? No. But through his definition of good and evil, saying, I get to decide what's right for my life. I get to decide what's true for me. I get to decide. Nobody can tell me what right and wrong is. I get to define what's right and wrong. He slowly began to rationalize things so that he was destroying all of his competition, stop at nothing, throw babies in the Nile, throw my teammates in the river, and guess what? In a single day, Lance Armstrong lost 8 corporate sponsorships. In a single day, he was one day stripped of all 7 jerseys, all of his Tour de France victories. It's in I pray for him. Jesus touched Lance Armstrong's life. We bless him. We speak peace over that guy. But that's in all of us. There's a Pharaoh in each of us. And it won't go to that same degree for most of us. We'll never be millionaires. We couldn't if we tried, But there's something in each of us like that. And maybe it for you, or you're a people pleaser, maybe it shows up and you're throwing yourself in the Nile. Not other people. But it's in each of us. There's a Babylon inside of us. There's a Pharaoh in each of us. There's a Lance Armstrong in each of us. So verse 22, this is so horrible. But Pharaoh commanded all his people, saying, every son who's born to you shall be cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive. So he's just acting like a genocidal maniac at this point. And we're most familiar and most antagonistic to Hitler. One of my favorite authors, Tom Holland, he points out that in the secular liberal imagination, and Tom Holland was an atheist and a Oxford-trained historian. He's actually kind of becoming a Christian. But he points out that in the secular liberal imagination, Hitler is the devil and Auschwitz is hell. And we need to run as far as we can on the political spectrum away from becoming Hitler, because Hitler, what did he do? He did just what Pharaoh did. He said, Jews will not replace us. Jews will not replace us. Like national security, we need to defend blood and soil to the point of, I won't even go into it. I mean, the Holocaust is incomprehensibly evil. But something I want to point out that we're not as comfortable with talking about in Portland is that Mao Zedong and Stalin and Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, they did just as bad, if not worse stuff than the Nazis in the name of class war, in the name of the proletariat versus the bourgeoisie, in the name of Marxism and scientific socialism. Like they did the same things. And what I'd really, if you like sci-fi, there's the reader's version if you like reading, but then there's also the way less good Netflix version. But I recommend to you the book Three-Body Problem. Okay, it's by a Chinese national. I don't want to butcher his name, but check out Three-Body Problem. You can read the books. They're phenomenal. Just a fabulous author. You can also watch it on Netflix. But there they depict what are called struggle sessions. This is in Mao Zedong's leftist, the far left, right? Maoism, Marxism, that's about as far left as you can go. They depict what's called a struggle session. And the way it works, we hear a lot of this in Portland. We hear kill the rich, eat the rich, kill your landlord. We hear that. I mean, I see it tagged around town. we see this, but I mean, I see it all the time. That's why I'm talking about it. Yeah, those horrible capitalist pigs, like we need to fight against them. And there is horrible economic inequality and injustice and oppression. But what happened within the Soviet Union and communist China is they said, we're going to take down the bourgeois, we're going to take down the aristocrats because they've been stealing our wages, and we're going to redistribute it in the name of the revolution. But here's the thing. Communist Marxist revolutions are a lot like Pringles. Once you pop, the fun don't stop. And what I mean by that is this. Once you've executed a bunch of people in the name of the redistribution of wealth, what's one more journalist? Like what's one more dissident? And that's what you see in Three-Body Problem. You see a struggle session where they are brutally humiliating and then executing a scientist just because he believes in Einstein's theory of relativity, Western science. He's like, that's capitalist science. We can't believe that capitalist science, that Western science. And so they kill him. And where I'm going with this is simply to say this. I want to let you all get to Mother's Day brunch, so I'll not go too much further with this. But I want to say more, but I'm just going to say this. Jesus is not an elephant. Jesus is not a donkey. He's a lion and a lamb. And he has a kingdom which will last every human party. It will outlast every ideology. It will outlast every nation. It will last every spectrum. Jesus has the only kingdom that will never end. And that's the kingdom that I'm on board with. All right. All right. You probably didn't expect that on Mother's Day to learn about the struggle sessions of Red China, but hey, that's you come to my church, so there you go. All right. Our final thought this morning is God's rescue plan comes in unexpected ways. God's rescue plan comes in unexpected ways. Then the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, whose name was Shiphrah, and the other was Puah. Now, why do I think this is such a big deal, other than the fact that those are really weird names? Is that we don't know Pharaoh's name. And what's Babylon all about? We shall make a name for ourselves. What are those pyramids all about? Making a name for yourself. What are those gold coffins about? Making a name for yourself. Eternal. But here, we don't have Pharaoh's name, but we have these two midwives. They probably led an association of midwives. because 2 women couldn't do all this. I mean, maybe that's why they were so slow. They're like, those women are vigorous. We can get there on time. That was hilarious. But we get their names. These Hebrew slaves, these Hebrew midwives, these 2 little women, their names forever will be remembered as Shifra and Puah, and their names mean beauty and sparkle. That's so cool. We don't know Pharaoh's name. And a little spoiler, in the book of Exodus, there are 7 women, and the way the Hebrew authors are so genius, they deliberately write it in a way that these 7 women are the redemption of Eve. They use all these key words from the Eve story and say, no, these 7 women, they're the ones who were the architects of the Exodus. This is a patriarchal society. This is a society where women are property, but not in God's eyes. In God's eyes, women are image bearers. They're clandestine spies. They're saboteurs. They're the ones who stop the tyrant. These 2 beautiful midwives, they are the instruments of liberation. So beautiful. Verse 17, but the midwives feared God and did not do as the king commanded. He said, I love that verse. It's so bad to the bone. Like, what a bunch of baddies. Like, the midwives feared God, and they didn't do what this totalitarian, wealthy, divine, supposedly infinite tyrant commanded. He disobeyed them. If you fear God, you don't have to fear anybody else. You don't have to be afraid. And I have to tell myself that. I get up here and I say, you know, I'm not saved by what this audience thinks about me. I'm saved by what you think about me, Jesus. They don't show up. They don't come to church. They don't want to be here. I don't care. I'm loved by you. That's what matters. And if you get that in your heart, you can apply that in your home. You can apply that in your workplace. You can apply that everywhere you go. If you fear God, you don't have to fear anyone else. I'll keep this real brief, but I can't resist showing it to you. I got to see the bus in Detroit that Rosa Parks rode on. This is the actual seat that Rosa Parks sat in when she stood up to the bullies, to the pharaohs, to the Babylons in Montgomery, Alabama. Okay, famous. And check out this quote from Rosa Parks. Oh, it's irresistible. All right. Oh, there's a funny one first. My favorite one. She goes, people always say that I didn't give up my seat because I was tired. But that isn't true. I wasn't tired physically. I was only tired of giving in. Oh my gosh, Rosa Parks, so cool. But this is the quote I want to show you. Check out this other one. As a child, I learned the Bible to trust in God and not be afraid. And I felt the Lord would give me the strength to endure whatever I had to face. God did away with all my fear. Knowing what must be done diminishes fear. From my upbringing in the Bible, I learned people should stand up for the rights just as the children of Israel stood up to Pharaoh. I'd like to be remembered as a person who wanted to be free so that others could also be free. Man, I feel like that's Puah and Sifra's granddaughter right there. That's so cool. All right, we'll close this thing out. The band come up on stage. You know me, I could go all day, but I don't want to do that to you. So the last thing I want to just say here is this. As the band comes up, is verse 12. This is the one that's going to help free you from your fear. All right? We started off talking about you afraid about paying your bills? You afraid about not getting that promotion at work? You afraid of being single the rest of your life? You're afraid of you know, what's going to happen in the country? You're afraid of what's going to happen in Washington, D.C.? Check out this, verse 12. Oh, it's so cool. The more they were afflicted, the more they grew. The more they were afflicted, the more they grew. There's some Bible stuff going on here. Genesis 1, God creates humans in his image. Verse 28, he wants them to rule and to spread his blessing across the earth, to be fruitful and multiply. Then, all the bad stuff with the fall, the sin, God chooses Abraham, and he's going to make Abraham the blessing that's going to then spread all over the nations of the earth. Well, here, Pharaoh's trying to exterminate them. Like pests, like roaches, like rats. That's what the crazy dictators always say. They don't see the image of God. They see pests, right? He's trying to squash them and exterminate them and commit genocide. But it says, the more they were afflicted, the more they grew. This is the message of the cross, is that God comes in unexpected places. Jesus wasn't born in a gold palace like Pharaoh. He was born in a manger like Sifra and Puah. He was born in an unexpected place. And through suffering, through pain, through agony, God brought the salvation of the world. That's what we're going to remember with communion. That's the message of the cross. My point here is this: suffering cannot thwart God's purposes in your life.
We're so glad you checked out this message. We exist because of supportive people like you. If you want to give, go to counterculture.church.